Welcome to the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we help Christian founder led nonprofits to get funded so that you can lead well, live whole, and leave a legacy. We're in the middle of a series right now on going through a book called Winning with People by John Maxwell. It's one of my all time favorite books. I read this probably 20 years ago, and it's still been one of the most impactful books in my life, in leadership, in connecting with others. I go back to the principles in this book often. I was just doing a coaching session with somebody yesterday and brought up one of these principles because they really are evergreen. They're timeless. You can keep coming back to them over and over again. They're so basic, but there's so much depth in them. And so on our last episode, we covered the first section of the book. It's broken up into 4 or 5 different sections, questions that John Maxwell asks that revolve around relationships. And so last week we looked at the readiness question. Are we prepared for relationships? And inside of each of these questions, there's different principles that apply, 5 or 6 different principles. And so today I want to look at the connection question. And what this question asks is, are we willing to focus on others? And there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different principles that I want to look at. And I want to look at all of these through the lens of fundraising. So not only looking at these principles as far as connecting with people, but I also want to look at these principles as far as how do these principles and how does winning with people connect to fundraising? How does this help us in fundraising, in the whole fundraising world and connecting with others to create these long lasting partnerships? Because we know that effective and long lasting fundraising is all about relationships. And so if we want to build good relationships, then we need to know how to win with people. We need to know how we can connect with other people, and we need to work on our people skills. And so this first question, are we willing to focus on others, I think is a really important question. You know, when it comes to fundraising, are we willing to focus on other people? And I'm just going to give you the overview of these 6 different principles, and then we'll dig into them a little bit deeper. And so the first one is the big picture principle. The entire population of the world, with one minor exception, is composed of others. The big picture principle. The second principle we're going to look at is the exchange principle. Instead of putting others in their place, we must first put ourselves in their place. Number 3 is the learning principle. Each person we meet has the potential to teach us something. Number 4 is the charisma principle. People are interested in the person who is interested in them. Number 5 is the number 10 principle. Number 5, number 10. The number 10 principle is the next one. Believing the best in people usually brings the best out of people. And then the last principle underneath this question we're going to look at is the confrontation principle. Caring for people should precede confronting them. And these different principles are so key in how do we connect with others? How do we focus on other people? And so in the big picture principle, for those who are watching on YouTube, you can see I'm like flipping through my book here. I'm looking at some of my notes and just kind of going back to some of these things. So in the big picture principle, it really has this idea that the entire world is made up of other people. With just one minor exception, the whole world is made up of others. And so often we tend to think the whole world revolves around us, whether we want to admit it or not. The world started the day you were born, and the world will end the day that you die. And we have this, just kind of perspective of coming at life that everything revolves around us. It's all about me. I had a friend of mine that I'm in a men's group with, and he teaches at a high school. And he made this, it was just a really funny statement that he shared, and just this whole perspective. He was dealing with a student, and he said, well, it's all your world. I'm just living in it. And I kind of chuckled at that because, so often we're dealing with other people and they're so caught up in their world, we're just living in it. And so it's the same thing so often. If we're not willing to focus on others, we get this idea that it's my world, everybody else is just living in it. But if we really want to connect with others, if we want to have long lasting relationships, then we need to be able to see things from other people's perspective. And I think that's a really key piece at the beginning of this is what's the perspective in which we're looking at other people? Are we just looking at everything through our own lens, or can we look at things through somebody else's perspective? Looking back at some of my notes here, um, yeah, responsible leaders have an others first attitude, and they're positioned for serving people, taking responsibility, and being an example, giving others credit, mending relationships. Good leaders understand that for the team to succeed, they must put others first. And John Maxwell talks about getting out of our own little world, checking our ego at the door. He writes, an egoist can be described not as the person who thinks too much of himself, but someone who thinks too little of other people. And that the opposite of loving others is being self centered. And he makes this point that if you want to live a fulfilling life, you need to have healthy relationships. And ultimately, a key component of having a healthy relationship is being able to have this big picture principle, seeing things from other people's perspective. And I think that brings us just beautifully into this next principle, the exchange principle, that talks about instead of putting others in their place, we must put ourselves in their place. And again, I think this is such a beautiful thing for us to approach in relationships is can we see things from the other person's perspective? So often we want to defend our perspective. We want to have other people understand us. We want other people to see that we're right. And it's really hard for us to go to the other side of the bridge, look at things through somebody else's perspective, and really see things from their point of view. And I thought this is an interesting quote by George Washington Carver. He made this observation. He said, how far you go in life depends on our being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant with the weak and strong, because someday in life you will have been all of these. And our treatment of others really results in our perspective of them. And it's interesting that when we go through something, we go through a difficulty or we go through a particular season, it's a lot easier for us to understand somebody else who's going through that season. It's more difficult for us and it takes a lot more maturity and maybe emotional intelligence to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes in a situation that maybe you haven't been through. But it's so important to be able to do this because it's not natural. We don't see ourselves from others' perspective. And usually we see ourselves in the light of our intentions and we measure others according to their actions. And I think this is a really interesting observation with this principle is I look at myself through my intentions and I look at others through their actions. And so when I'm looking at a situation, I can look from my own perspective and say, well, I didn't mean to do XYZ. I didn't mean to come across that way. I didn't mean to make you feel stupid. I didn't mean to demean you. I didn't mean to whatever. And so I look at my own intention from my perspective. But when I'm evaluating somebody else or I'm looking at somebody else, I am looking at it through their actions, not through their intentions. And if I can truly see things from the other person's perspective, then maybe I can look at their intentions as well. And I can explore the idea that maybe they didn't mean to make me feel stupid. Maybe they didn't mean to get angry at me. Maybe they didn't mean to use the words that they used, or they didn't mean to be hurtful. The same way that maybe I would be interpreting my own thoughts and my own behaviors. And John Maxwell, he talks about how do you actually make this exchange? How do you see things from somebody else's perspective? How do you go to the other side of the bridge and look from the standpoint of how the other person's looking. And one of the first things that he says is you leave your place and you visit their place. That you do whatever you can to exchange your perspective. You listen to people's concerns. You study their culture, their profession. You read on their areas of interest, or you literally visit their place, their home, their office, their neighborhood, their region. And we go to where they are. And I think this is interesting. In my life, I've done a lot of research and reading and trainings around personality styles and temperaments and understanding other people. And a lot of it has come out of this desire to want to understand others, want to understand their perspective. And so, if we truly want to see things from somebody else's perspective, then we need to go to where they are. Maybe we visit their home. Maybe we talk about their past and what happened in their childhood or as a teenager that maybe has shaped who they are now. Can I understand more of their perspective based on what they've been through? Can I learn a little bit about their religion, about their church, about their denomination, about their upbringing, their background? Am I really interested in learning the other person? Really interesting thing. I don't think I've ever admitted this in public, but here we go. We're on the podcast. You get to know a little bit more about me. I had a time when I was coming back from Haiti. I was doing mission work there, and I ended up getting stranded in Miami for a day. I had to stay the night and get a flight the next day because my flight was canceled. And so I didn't have anything to do, and I'm like trying to figure out what am I going to do with all this extra time. And I decided, you know what? I heard of this really cool spot not far from Miami where lots of art and just kind of a neat place to go and see. Like people had spray painted these different buildings, and I thought that'd be kind of cool to check out and walk around. And while I was there, I heard this party, all this music happening. It was kind of later in the day. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go check it out, see what's happening. It sounds kind of fun. And there was, yeah, I ended up finding out it was a whole Pride festival. And I don't really understand or didn't at that point understand a lot about gay rights and being an ally and being there for other people. And I decided that I would go and attend, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to go check this out because as I am coaching other people, as I'm helping other people, as I'm serving other people, I want to be able to see things from another person's perspective. I want to visit all other cultures and be able to understand what things look like from a cultural perspective. I want to go to other people's places of business and understand that. And so I think I was probably the only straight person in this entire festival. And it was really interesting being in a totally different culture, a totally different space. And I was able to have a couple of conversations with people while I was there. And it was so incredibly meaningful. It was really neat for me to be able to understand more of what people are going through. I remember talking with one woman who had been in a state where gay marriage was legal, and she had gotten married and then moved to Florida where gay marriage was not recognized, and just learning about her story and what had happened with that and people not recognizing her as even being having a valid marriage and just all these different things. And whether you agree with things or you don't agree with things or whatever, it's the idea of being able to step into somebody else's perspective, step into their place, understand them. And I think from a fundraising perspective, this idea, this principle is so key because if I want to build partnerships, if I want to build relationships, then I need to be able to see things through the other person's perspective. I need to learn about business if I want to have good partnerships with people in business. I need to learn what matters to a business owner and how can I see things from their perspective. If I'm going to go and make a presentation and invite a business to support my organization, do I know what even matters to a business owner? Do I know how they make decisions for choosing what they want to support? If I want to go and fundraise in churches and talk to pastors and missions committees, then Do I understand their denominations? Do I understand the difference between a Baptist denomination and a Reformed denomination and a more charismatic denomination? Do I understand what matters to an Assemblies of God pastor versus a Southern Baptist pastor? There's different things from their perspective that really do matter. And so, am I willing to put myself in somebody else's place? And that's part of being prepared for relationships. That if I am truly ready to connect with others, then I'm willing to put myself in their place. The next principle is the learning principle. I really like this one, and I'm going to see if I can find in the book here. It says each person we meet has the potential to teach us something. And there's a couple of different attitudes that we can have when we connect with others. And I'm just going to run through those. There's the first attitude is that no one can teach me anything. It's a very arrogant attitude. The next attitude that we can take in learning from others is the naive attitude that someone can teach me everything. One person can teach me everything that I need to know. It's a very naive attitude. Then there's the teachable attitude that everyone can teach me something. And I really, really like this principle because we are able to learn in any situation. We're able to learn from every single perspective, every single person, that everybody has something that they can teach us. Doesn't mean we can learn everything from one person, but everybody has something that we can teach us. And when we approach people this way, it adds value to every single person that we interact with. If we can really see that everybody has something that they can teach you, then we value people from that perspective. That when I'm in a conversation with somebody, I don't come to the fundraising conversation with arrogance, thinking that I'm the only one who knows anything. I don't come into a fundraising conversation thinking this one person is going to meet every single need that I have. But if I can come into the conversation realizing that every single person that I'm talking to has the opportunity to be a partner, every single person has the capacity to teach me something, then I'm able to connect with people in a meaningful way. The next principle, and I'm going to kind of run through these other ones kind of fast because I'm coming to the end of my time here. I can't believe I'm already this this long in the podcast, but I love talking about this. It's one of my favorite things. So the next one is the charisma principle, that people are interested in the person who's interested in them. That when we show interest in somebody else, then they want to show interest in us. They want to show interest in what matters to us. They want to get to know us. And so when I'm interacting with somebody in a fundraising conversation or I'm building a relationship with somebody, I need to show interest in them first and foremost. And there's 6 different ways that John Maxwell talks about in how to show interest in other people. The first one is to become genuinely interested in other people, to really have a genuine interest in wanting to know about others. The second is to smile. And I love this one. I've talked about this in some of my other teachings that smiling is contagious. We have these neurons in our brain that are called mirror neurons, that when we see somebody else doing something, it lights up a part of their brain as if they were doing it themselves as well. When we see somebody else eating ice cream on TV, there's a part of our brain that lights up the same way as if we were eating ice cream. And it's the same with a smile, that when somebody sees you smile, it lights something up in them that creates a connection. And so I love that idea of just charisma. Part of that is just smiling. Doesn't have to be complicated. The next one is that you remember that a person's name is to him or her the sweetest, most important sound. And I've really applied this one in a lot of my leadership, a lot of my connections. I work really, really hard to get to know people's names, and then I use their names often. A lot of times in the first interaction with somebody, I try to use their name 2 or 3 times. Not only is that just a memory trick so that you can remember their name, but it makes this instant connection that continues to tell the person you matter to me, that something as simple as remembering your name, that's important to me because I know that it's important to you. Again, people are interested in the person who's interested in them. And it's something that I've actually put a lot of effort and energy into, even learning mental tricks of how do I remember people's names. So I can be in a room of 20 or 30 people and go around and everybody say their names and then be able to go back and say everybody's names in the room. And that's taken me a lot of practice, but it is amazing how valued people feel when you can remember their name. And just that simple thing brings so much connection. Number five is to talk in terms of other people's interest. And so learn what interests other people, learn about their hobbies, learn about what matters to them, and then talk to them about their interests. One of my favorite questions to ask somebody when I'm first getting to know them is, what do you like to do for fun? And that kind of highlights, these are the things they're interested in, these are the hobbies they have. And I try really hard to be curious about other people's interests. Tell me more about that. And I'd love to hear more, or what got you into that in the first place. And maybe, for a lot of things, I've tried a lot of different things. So then I can talk about other people's interests in somewhat of an intelligent way, because it's not out of a state of manipulation or coercion or trying to get you to just do what I want. I'm genuinely interested in connecting to other people. I think sometimes people fear that if they take these principles that it's going to feel manipulative, that I'm just using this to manipulate people into giving me money. And yes, there are people that do that. There's con artists out there and they learn all these principles and just use it to con people into giving to them or into buying from them. That's not at all what we're doing. It has to start in your heart with this genuine interest for wanting to connect with other people. The sixth piece of connecting with others, or this charisma principle, six ways to make people like you, is to make the other person feel important. And John Maxwell adds in, do it sincerely. But you want to make them feel important. And in fundraising, I always say that we want to make the donor the hero of the story. That as I'm sharing a newsletter or a marketing update or something on Facebook, or I want to make the donor the hero of the story. I want them to feel important. I want them to know the importance of what they bring to the table and how much it means for them to be involved in this partnership. And so, in order to connect with others, to make people like you, is make them feel important, show that they matter. The next principle, I think we've only got two more here. The next one is the number 10 principle. Believing in people usually brings the best out of people. And I think this is so true that, at least in my life, I can recall so many people that because they believed in me, I rose to the bar of that belief. They believed that I could achieve something, and I rose to that and I achieved something. Or they believed enough to invest in me. And so then I believed in myself and I wanted to go out and rise to that. And so I think this is such a true principle that believing in others usually brings the best out of them. And so even when I'm approaching fundraising, I can approach it with these limiting beliefs, as if this person doesn't want to partner with me. This person doesn't want to support. They aren't going to believe in the mission that I believe in. Maybe I believe that they don't have enough money, or they won't see the vision. They don't really care about helping other people, whatever those are, right? That if I believe that about the other person, then I'm lessening the chance of connecting with them. I'm actually creating disconnection. But if I can go into a fundraising presentation, maybe I'm standing in front of a church and I can believe the best in everyone, make my presentation from the perspective that, of course, every single one of these people cares about making a difference in the world. Of course, every single person in this business meeting wants to do something meaningful. If I can approach all of my relationships that way, believing the best in the other person, then usually people will rise to that. And then the very last principle, in this question that we're going to answer, is the confrontation principle. And I'm just going to turn to that one again because I didn't have it up. Caring for people should precede confronting people. And this talks a lot about conflict. And I think understanding conflict and understanding what creates conflict and the conflict cycle, is extremely important in being a good leader, in connecting with others. That if we don't understand how to handle conflict well, we can actually end up creating a lot more damage. I think I'm going to do a separate podcast on conflict and the conflict cycle. So I'm not going to get too far into that topic right now. But I think the big thing to realize is that before you try to address something with somebody or address a difficult conversation, really consider, do you care about them first? Are you approaching conflict from a place of I have to be right, I have to get my way? Or are you approaching conflict from a place of I genuinely care about you, and because I care about you, I want to resolve this relationship. I want to make sure we sustain this relationship or we deal with this issue, right? And so, yeah, this has been the connection question. Are we ready to connect with others? And again, the book is Winning with People by John Maxwell. And I think these principles, they help us in general in life, but especially in fundraising. As we connect with others, we build relationships with others. And I want to just remind you that as you go throughout this week, to lead well, live whole, and leave a legacy.